Splatoon 3's single-player campaign has a variety of interesting levels to give an enjoyable experience to the player while also teaching them the game's mechanics. But a lot of those levels have unique features that are never seen outside of Alterna, at least in multiplayer modes, and they feel like a missed opportunity. I think some of them could really add depth to the stages we currently have and make them more interesting and unique. So in this video, I will share 3 things from Splatoon 3's single-player campaign that I want to see in multiplayer modes. Of course, I'm not a game designer, and I'm sure there's a good reason as to why those things haven't been added to PvP. I'm only here to share some cool ideas. With that being said, let's get into it. Let's start off with ride rails. Now we do already have ink rails. You can move back and forth on them, but it's really hard to do anything other than swim because you barely have the time to jump, quickly shoot a couple shots or throw a bomb, then go back in swim form to try and not fall off. Ink rails can be very practical, but they also make you an easy target. But the difference with ride rails is that you can, well, ride them. So you can use your main, sub, or special weapon while standing on the rail. You can also go in swim form to refill your ink. But the major downside is that they're one way only, so if you get on one, you gotta commit to it. You can jump off, but you can't go back. In PvP, I think they could be used as flanks or side routes in some modes. Definitely not Rainmaker though, because that would be terrible considering how fast ride rails are. Since you can't go back, making ride rails a high risk, high reward kind of thing, they would lead to strong positions on the map that the enemy can't ignore. They'd be used to threaten from a different angle and force the opponents to pay attention to whoever is on that rail, because they can easily use their weapons and will gain access to a strong position if not stopped. I have some examples to illustrate what I mean. On Mahi Mahi Resort, there could be a ride rail that starts at the right of spawn and ends up on the islands on the right. You'd be able to jump off on earlier islands or even on the stage if you see that someone is camping the end of the rail, but if you get access to that area, then the enemy has to deal with you, giving your teammates a chance to get them while they're distracted. I think it'd be a nice way to give more options on Mahi to regain map control and start pushes. For another example, I think it'd be nice to have one on ship-shaped cargo code that leads to that incline on the left and mid, in spot zones and turf wars specifically. In other modes, there's already a flank there, but not in spot zones and turf war, so I think it could be a cool alternative. Those spots in mid are key areas for map control, and sometimes it can be really hard to push back in. So being able to get there while shooting at the enemy could really help with that problem. Ride rails would be a really cool thing to divert your opponent's attention and gain access to key parts of the map. They'd of course be available on both sides and have the same system as ink rails when it comes to who's controlling them and their duration. Then we have ink wheels. These are pretty similar to curling bombs in the sense that they create a path of ink, but they're in set positions and the trail is a bit wider. I think they'd be cool to help with flanking or to assist low mobility weapons. They're pretty loud and have a recognizable sound effect, so I don't think they'd be broken if they help with flanks. Also, it's just very noticeable if someone's activated it with the path of ink it makes. They could also be used as a distraction tool like curling bomb when someone throws one and you're forced to check if they're swimming through it or not. For example, on Wahoo World, there could be one where that spinner is in mid. It would give easy access to the opposing side of the map for flanks, and it can give faster routes in modes like Rainmaker and Clam Blitz. Or on Hagglefish Market, there could be one on that right flank. Hagglefish is a hallway. That flank on the right side can take forever and you usually end up getting splatted very quickly. So having an inkwheel that goes in a straight line there could help make that already disadvantageous flank a little faster. Now inkwheels are typically one use in single player and won't respawn, which is obviously not great for PvP, but I think an easy fix is that they could break when they hit a wall or fall in the water and then respawn at the starting point. Inkwheels would be nice as a utility tool for certain flanks or weapons who struggle with ink efficiency or mobility. They'd also be available on both sides, but only for the team they're intended for, similarly to sponges. And for the final single player feature I want to see in PvP, soaker blocks. These are temporary blocks that expand to a certain number when you ink them, and then they'll shrink back to one block after a bit of time. That process is made faster if they're hit by enemy ink. My idea for these is to put them in areas that lack inkable walls for them to be temporary inkable walls, to give more options for routes or return to the previous area if needed. They'd run out faster than they do in single player to force the player to be fast if they're gonna use them for an extra route. For example, I'd want them on that right side of Manta Maria on most modes. There's a one-way drop there, and adding blocks would give more freedom to move around as both defenders and attackers. They'd also work well on Hammerhead Bridge. It has that awful one-way drop on the left side out of spawn, and it's so easy to get stuck there. Adding those soaker blocks would not only give a really cool second route for modes like Clown Blitz, but you'd also be able to go back if you drop and realize that your opponents are gonna trap you there. Soaker blocks would be a great way to give more routes and freedom to players without giving a permanent inkable block, since the devs seem to really hate those for some reason. They could be used by both teams on both sides and wouldn't last as long as they usually do in Alterna to make them more balanced. And those were my ideas on how I'd implement those 3 single-player features in PvP modes. Even though none of these ideas are very realistic, I do want to see more of those small single-player features because I think they could be used in really interesting and fun ways in multiplayer modes. Clearly, the devs have seen that propellers and ride rails work in salmon run stages, sometimes, and in old Splatfest maps, so why not add them to our current multiplayer maps? I wouldn't want them to be overused, of course, but I think they could spice up certain map modes. Anyway, let me know which hero mode features you'd like to see in PvP. Thank you so much for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Bye!